me. Don't talk to 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 me. Don't talk. It's the ways of the underground.
Haven't you had enough?
The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Crime and violence.
got to let it go, baby. You got to let it go. You got to let it go, baby. You got to let it go. To let it go, baby. You got to let it go. You got to let it go, baby. You got to let it go.
Game against them, going for these solo plays in the air, getting the bump. There's a bump there. Torben can't finish. Noli awkward. Beast mode. No, it's denied by Noli. What a recovery as GenG look to move downfield.
How is this game still going? Champions Field brings out the best of everyone. Beast mode scores, and version 1 cuts down GenG.
Beast mode off the assist from Calm, gets just enough behind it to where.
Hey guys, welcome into Off the post-game show. I'm joined this week with special guest CJCJ. How you doing, CJ? Host of the CJCJ show and new analyst for RLCS.
Doing well, doing well. Incredible weekend and can't wait to get into the action because yeah, it was some. I feel like it was just overtime, Game 7 overtime galore. So can't wait.
Yeah, I was just forgetting to breathe in so many of the overtimes, and it was a really incredible way to end it with the goal we saw. Just so much back and forth, so much offense, an incredible display of like fundamental skill and IQ. I think we really got a special treat with this grand final, more so than some of the other finals we've seen.
Yeah, and especially this weekend with so many best of sevens, it was only fitting for this grand final, of course, to go to the final game. But it seemed like, I don't know what you guys felt like, but it seemed like V1 had a lot of control throughout most of the series. I was kind of surprised that it went to 7 in the first place. CJ, were you kind of seeing the same things out there?
I think, yeah, well, obviously, GenG started off strong with a 5-0. You can't go better with a game 1 than that. But yeah, they really started controlling it, locking it down. So clearly, Fire was getting onto him. Fireburner was in there telling them, they just started doing the 50 game. They were just playing a lot more controlled and sitting behind the ball. That lets Com, push downfield and get some demos. So it's nice seeing those sort of mid-series change-ups. And yeah, they look really strong from that.
Cam, did you feel like it was kind of the beast mode show? Or was it, because of course, he did get the game-win goal, and he had a stellar performance last weekend. I think he was trending on Twitter, at least for me, for a little bit. So was it the beast mode show for you and, everything individually that he brings for this V1 squad? And what else did you see?
Beast mode does a lot for V1, obviously. He's the go-to. He's the guy you want to be doing well. But I think when V1 are performing at their best, when they are in regional winning form and major winning form, all three of the players are on point. And I think Com really, really stepped up this weekend. This whole weekend,
oh, yeah.
He looked like London Com. It was really, really incredible. I mean, he broke the demo record in this same regional. He did everything that he normally does, but amped up to 10.
Yeah, I thought Com in particular, obviously tilting NRG, or at least it felt like he was kind of being a menace in that series. Of course, he set the record, 23 demos. He didn't seem to continue that in the finals, though. It didn't seem like they needed that version 1 against GenG. It felt like they had a little bit of a different style, more finesse. It felt like they had a lot more respect for GenG on the ball than they did for NRG, where it's just like, okay, as Com, I can just go demo whoever on the field. NRG's not going to beat the 2 players behind me, but I need to be back for GenG, right? Because they're more of a threat. It felt like, that's kind of where version 1 was at in the finals, and boy, did it pay off. They look great. On the other side, though, for GenG, what do you guys think GenG could have changed up in that finals to maybe pick up the Game 7? Like I said, I'm surprised it even got there because I thought that it was going to go 4-1. So credit to GenG for battling back, which is basically the nickname of their team at this point, the Never Give Up Squad. So,
I don't know. I actually thought after the first 4 games, when obviously V1 they lost the first, they won the next 3. I think GenG actually looked probably stronger those next 3 games. Obviously they won it, so it's easy to say that, but they just looked like a better team. They were just flicking the ball around, they're creating more opportunities and being a little bit more, I guess, daring with the ball. They were willing to take a few more risks, and I thought they looked stronger. But I always have this saying: once it goes to Game 7, it's just like the play styles, everything gets thrown out the window, and it's just about moments. And unfortunately for GenG, V1, they've got beast mode. They've got the best player all tournament, one of the best players in the world, and that was that clutch factor. Made the most of their opportunities, and yeah, they just got the win. But it was close. I think it was neck and neck. Both teams look better at stages, but then it just gets to Game 7, and beast mode stepped up, V1 stepped up, and got the win.
5 overtimes, Cam. 5 overtimes out of 7 games in the finals.
It was honestly really impressive for GenG to show that much resilience, especially when they take a timeout and they proceed to lose the next game, and now they're stuck on match point with no timeout. And just 2 very, very long OTs that they battle back and win later. When those goals go in, you see the player cams, they're super, super excited to be clutching it up and getting to Game 7. But V1 hold their timeout all the way. And a question they asked on the broadcast at the end of the show that I'd love to ask you guys here is, do GenG have a problem winning finals? Because this is their 2nd finals in a row, and they've lost both of them. Or is it too early to tell?
Do you want to take that one, CJ? That's a big question.
I think it's too easy or too quick to say that, to jump to conclusions. Obviously, last regional they versed a FaZe clan that was just dominated everyone. And then this regional, I guess you could say that. They probably were the favourites going in. V1 weren't really touted as, I guess they, going into the regional, probably people thinking maybe top 4 will be their best sort of approach here, because obviously didn't start off strong the first regional. So I guess you could say they were favourites going in, especially how they handled Space Station. Maybe you're onto something, Crow, but I think it's too early to say. Those guys are still pretty clutch. We've seen it on the World Championship stage, and they're still young. They're still such a new team, which is probably where V1 had the edge in the grand final. When the pressure's on, those guys are used to playing each other or playing with each other in those pressure situations. So maybe a bit more time on that team, and they'll start winning some grand finals.
Yeah, I think, it is an interesting question because it's really difficult. Where's the line? 3 series or 2 series? Like, is it 2 series? Obviously, it's too much, but it's teetering on the edge. For me, I think if you're gonna say G2 has a finals problem of like not being able to close it out, I think you have to say that the question marks are surrounding the GenG team now, having done it twice in a row. But for some reason, I can't take myself to say it, that they are, going to be struggling with those things. I think it was a tough matchup for them last week with FaZe coming in the way they were with all the hype behind them. I think it just kind of felt like FaZe's tournament. And then when I saw the bracket this weekend, I know I'm hindsight Harry here, but if version 1 could get past Furia, I felt like it was their bracket because they had an NRG or an Optic waiting for them, and I favored them in that matchup. And then when you have a version 1 making it all the way to the finals, that's really, really scary. At any point, I feel like this version 1 squad can catch fire. And that's what's so scary about them for me, is that it doesn't need to just be beast mode because of how consistent Torment is. He allows his teammates to have so many more opportunities. You don't need to catch fire as a team. Like, if you do and they're in form, it's great. But even out of form, V1 still has a lot of offense that you need to defend.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's what Chrome said yesterday in the post-game interview for Space Station, was that V1 kind of had a free bracket. Like, V1 NRG historically is very V1 sided, and Calm breaking records there was not surprising. And then Torment's interview in the grand final was really interesting. He talked about just how they needed to play the ball away from the GenG players because they were pre-jumping so much, which I think if we go backwards to the semifinals for GenG and Space Station, that's why GenG dominated that matchup so quickly or so easily. The series is over fast because Space Station's strengths just got completely shut down. Like, GenG just had it completely covered, and Space Station just played into GenG over and over and over, and it just never worked out for him.
I mean, it's crazy to think if you look at that. I'm just looking at the bracket now. We're talking about the V1, that side of the bracket. If G2, I know we'll probably get into obviously the Swiss stage later, but if G2 managed to qualify, beat GenG, they would have had the V1 side with their game diff. So it is that sliding doors moment, I guess. If they were able to jump in there, then we're probably all talking about how good G2 are looking, because they probably had that easy run.
Yeah, exactly.
NRG and they're in the grand final. It's just such those little moments that can change a whole tournament.
And piggybacking off that, even before the G2 series, GenG were down 0-2, right? Or they had to reverse sweep in order to
They were down
get
0-2,
there.
and they reverse swept their round 3.
They reverse swept Axel, I believe, of all teams in round 4.
So there was a lot of Cinderella circumstances that went into GenG's favor to even make this grand final, which is kind of why I don't put so much pressure on them to win it 2 weeks in a row, because and I feel guilty after having Jack on the show last week, but I just feel like GenG is overperforming my expectations for them, and it's not really an individual thing for me. It's more of just like, all the circumstances that they had to go through to get here. I didn't expect them to perform so well so early. I thought it would take them at least a split, that they would definitely be, in that 10-8 spot, but I didn't see them making grand finals back-to-back and guaranteeing themselves a spot to land after 2 splits. Is definitely not something I saw coming from.
Is it a honeymoon period, Crow? You a believer in the honeymoon?
I mean, they have a lot of potential. Everybody knows their potential. But I don't think anybody expected them to be, like, no one's like, oh, GenG are the favorites for this region, like when they first announced. And nobody's thinking that. Everyone's thinking, oh, yeah, G2, FaZe, Space Station, maybe. Like, these guys are the favorites for the region with all these roster moves. The potential in GenG is undeniable, though. I don't necessarily know if it's like a honeymoon phase, though, because these players have never like really played together before. I don't think Jack and Noli have a history of playing together. And they move regions, and then suddenly they're like a cohesive unit. There's no individual star on that team, and their rotations are not super concrete either. It looks like it's just purely communication and trust based. And for that to come out of nowhere is a really good sign. And when they're struggling, they tend to bring it back. Like, they're down 0-2 in Swiss, they bring it back. They get a 0-second goal on G2 to move on. They're down 3-1 in the grand finals, down a timeout advantage. They take it all the way to Game 7 OT. I think there may be a little bit of a honeymoon phase, but I think there's some like hidden magic and potential in this team, and I think they're going to continue to do really well.
Yeah, I have to think. I think it's not a honeymoon phase. I agree. I think that this squad in particular has so much upside. I have to say, like, the one player on the team that I think I have the most question about is Nolly, and it's not because of a skill perspective. It's more just because I'm most unfamiliar with him. Because of how prominent Jack is, and he's in show matches and a lot of things like that. I'm very familiar with his play style, and Chronic, having played against him for years, I'm familiar with him, and Nolly's kind of a question mark to me, and I feel like he's really filling in the gaps for this team. Like, when there seems to be a stalemate, like Nolly last week, or was he in the semis, just came in, hit double flip reset, opened it up for his team to win Game 7. Those are the kinds of things that, if Nolly can keep performing like that, I think GenG have tremendous upside. Just because of like how grounded and solid Jack and Chronic are, both individually.
I think going back to the first regional as well, I was chatting to Jack before that. I mean, they didn't even have high expectations going in. They obviously, when, before the first regional, they screamed for 4 or 5 days, I think, as a team. They only just got into North America, over to Canada, so they didn't have much time, and the scrims weren't going amazingly. They weren't just instantly peaking, but then obviously that first regional, they just put it together. I think Jack put himself outside the top 5 in his own predictions that we did. So I mean, they didn't have the most confidence. So whether that is they're better than he thought they were going to be this soon, or perhaps there always question has to go back, is the North American region weaker than he anticipated? Perhaps I'm not so sure, but yeah, they've clearly brought it together so quickly.
There's definitely NA depth. We talked about EU depth. That was our buzzword last week. I mean, NA depth. Sleegy, if you have it, looking at the rankings currently, I see chat asking about the overall rankings. We'll pull that up in a second.
I mean, GenG are the first team to qualify for the major. They're the only ones guaranteed so far in the rankings list, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, one of the points I was going to make was that despite losing both grand finals, GenG find themselves at #1, which is a great indicator, I think, of the system that RLCS has in place, promoting consistency instead of just pure wins, which I like a lot. But as you guys see, FaZe Clan version 1 and GenG all guaranteed to go to Rotterdam already. Rounding out the top, Space Station, G2, NRG, Furia, Optic, the next 5 in line there. I will say, guys, of Space Station, G2, NRG, Furia, of those 4 teams, who's most likely not to make Rotterdam in your mind?
Oh, yeah.
You
want to go first?
Yeah, I still don't. I don't know. I need to see NRG go again. I need to see them running back next regional. I think it's crazy looking at the total points now that we've got a G2 who everyone was touting, even after the first regional, is still probably #1, or at least they're with FaZe Clan. Obviously, everyone after regional 1 was like FaZe Clan.
I was phased up, baby.
Which we didn't see regional 2, but it is crazy to think that NRG, everyone's writing them off. They need a roster change, and now they're at the same points as G2, a team that we're not really worried about. They had obviously a poor showing here. They lost a few game 5s to top 8 teams. But I guess, that's how the points work. And that's, you talk about the NA depth. Here we are. We've got even a Complexity who look like they haven't really put much of a foot wrong so far. They've sort of been around the mark. Optic Gaming sort of clutching up a few game 5s to scrape into the top 8 every time. But they're 7th. They're coming 5th to 8th, and they're not even, they're points outside the top 5. So I'll back in G2 to at least make, because that's easy. But in terms of the team missing out, I think Furia is only going to improve. I'm going to have to still say NRG. I don't want to be an NRG hater crow, but I just haven't. They obviously incredible this weekend, but I need to see it again.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the few teams, aside from G2 here, near the top, that have missed out on a top 8 before. And they have a lot to prove. They need one more top 8, I think, for people to really have their faith fully restored. But the other, this might come as a surprise to you guys, but I haven't been too impressed with the placements for Optic Gaming. Some of their matches have looked a little weird. They've been, like you said, CJ, scraping by. getting into top 8 last time over Complexity, that series was a bit scary to watch. I think Complexity should have had that, and then when Complexity rematched, they handled the Optic matchup like no problem. So, and they went to Game 7 with NRG, and Optic lost 2 of their games off of purely unforced errors. So I actually think Optic, they're tied with Furia in points, and Furia, I think, easily can peak and make the finals no problem if they have a really, really good regional. The 3 top 8s is just not enough to get you to the major these days, not with all the NA depth we have. So I think Optic really need to step up, and with Energy stepping up this regional over Optic, I think Optic are probably the one that I would pick to miss out.
Yeah, I think Optic, you make a great point, Cam. How concerned are you guys with Optic? Because they limped into last weekend into the top 8 with, arguably shouldn't be Complexity, like you talked about, Cam. That team, all 3 of them, I think, bumped each other. Some craziness happened, that Complexity match, which allowed Optic to make top 8. Was that this week? It was last week, right?
That was last regional, yeah.
Yeah, last regional.
That was during Swiss.
And then this regional, Optic do make top 8, but then lose to NRG, who I think, hasn't changed. We'll get to that in a little bit. But, for Optic, how concerned are you guys? Where's the stress meter right now out of 10? Because I love this Green Wall squad, and I know Spaceman listening is a mega Green Wall fan. So, where are the nerves right now for you guys? Because the results right now are not there for this Optic squad. I know they can do better.
I mean, they've just got to stop going to Game 5. They've really just been, I don't know, risking it. So, like, first regional, there's so many Game 5s, and just the Swiss stage isn't really their best friend. I mean, they're going to 5 against teams like 26 Rising, which if you're going to be a top 5 team, with all due respect to those guys, like, you need to be sort of doing a little bit more comfortably, and they just run the risk of dropping games to easier opponents. Really, in this sort of a format, you really you want to be beating those around you, and they're just not quite there. I think that if they were going to be a team that is going to be pushing into that major spot, as you sort of said, Carmen, you have to be beating your NRGs going into that. So
here's a list of teams they've beat, CJ. So they beat Flashes of Brilliance this week, which we saw rounding out like the top 16. They've also beat 26 Rising, which is outside like top 16 era. Dignitas outside the top 10. And then going back to last week, Luminosity, who aren't in the top 16. Complexity, which we said they shouldn't have won. And then Furia, I would say, is a good win. 3-1, although it wasn't the first regional. But if you look at the teams Optic have beat, it's all teams pretty much 4 out of 6 outside the top 16.
When you look at the teams around them, is sort of what you have to compare. You look at sort of Complexity's Swiss stage, looking at it now, they obviously beat Optic. They also swept GenG, only lost to FaZe and beat V1. So, like, when you're looking at teams that could make it, even though Complexity are 2 points below them in the standings, you're still favouring Complexity because at least they're still taking series off teams that are going to the grand finals. They're taking teams off these top 4. And I don't know about you, Crow, but I feel like looking at the standings now, I feel like there's a top 9 in North America. Optic's still in there, Complexity. Just looking at the rankings, Shopify's there. I think Shopify, I still have them a little bit below this sort of top 9 grouping in the NA depth. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think the Shopify, Complexity, Optic are kind of like the gatekeepers for North America right now. They're the ones who will always beat the teams below them, but are struggling to punch above their weight a little bit and really start taking these series. I mean, GenG, despite being number 1, has actually probably dropped the most to teams below them, and then just had to hit the hard regain in Swiss. But yeah, I mean, Shopify have been honestly really impressive. I think if you would ask me what the top 10 was, or the top 9 or top 8 was before the season started, I wouldn't have put Shopify Rebellion up here this high. They've been very impressive, and I think a lot of that is because of the addition of Two Piece, who was on that old roster in North America that used to take RLCS teams out in these Astra tournaments. He used to play with Chronic and Knight, and now Chronic and Two Piece are both top 10 RLCS. So it's that next generation of young NA talent coming through.
The depth, the NA depth, rearing its head.
I just think that I know you said complexity. I want to put complexity above these gatekeepers. I mean, you should look at the run
Like
they had. They went to the quarters. No, sort of with Fury, but I put them above the optics, your Shopify's around. I still think they can be a top. It's so hard to get in this top.
Will complexity
now,
make the major?
I think they'll. I really hope they go to another tiebreaker game with Space Station or something. That'd be exciting. But they'd have to put in a huge run. They'd looking at the points now, they'd probably need a top 2, top 4, depending on how they obviously the guys above them go. But they lost in 7 in the quarters to Game 7 OT to Space Station. Apart from that, the only other team they lost to this event was FaZe. So they beat V1, the winners. They beat GenG. They beat the grand finalists in Swiss and beat Optic as well, someone around their mark. So I think that that they could be the hard luck story moving forward, because I think they're still playing some pretty good Rocket League. They're just falling in once they get to that Championship Sunday. They're just not quite, getting a little bit further along.
Yeah,
so.
Game 7 lost the Space Station, a bit crushing.
Yeah,
they just need the clutch factor, I guess.
These teams I have filed as certain tiers in my head, and then when I see the certain results, it confuses me. Like a complexity loss to Space Station makes sense. But then at the same time, I don't like what I'm seeing from Space Station. I feel like they should be more dominant than they are. So I'm like, okay, it makes sense, but at the same time, I highly rate complexity. They need to put up results. I just think that first split for them, it might do them in. This split might be the reason they don't make Rotterdam. Because I think they need the bracket to go their way to get the matchups they need. To make that Sunday run, Championship Sunday run. And it's hard for me to confidently say that they'll make it into a semifinals. Because that's what they need at least, right? We're talking at least a semi.
Yeah, maybe some help.
And then you have G2. Who knows where they're going to be ranked. Where are they? 6, 7? And Cole, I think, is 8. So that you get G2 in the first round of Swiss. I mean, we'll see what it takes. But I think, they can do it. But they're just... I don't know if they're over the hump yet, and I don't know what it is. It's something about complexity where it gets into those pressure situations. I don't back them. I start to worry a bit just because of the Game 7 performances recently.
Yeah, it's just so close. I know what you're saying. I was sort of joking about NA depth, but you're looking at the rankings, looking at anyone can beat anyone inside that sort of top 9, top 10. And I like where you're going with Space Station. I wouldn't mind chatting about those guys because... You sort of worry about Space Station. They're not looking too hot. Well, I'm sort of worried about them as well. I think they're just so consistent. They're gonna make the major, but I just think when push comes to shove and you've got these other teams around you that seem to really step up, in the semis, grand finals. For Space Station, I don't know about you, but it just feels like the Daniel show. Like when push comes to shove and they really need something to happen. I'm not really seeing Arsenal and LJ step up. Particularly, look at that GenG series. Daniel was everywhere. It looked like he was sort of 1v3ing at times. They just really weren't putting their best foot forward. I don't know if this is like a play style thing, but I haven't seen yet, the LJ factor sort of coming to fruition like we've seen with Chronic. Like consistently just coming in as that young mechanical guy popping off. LJ seems to be going quiet, Championship Sundays, and then Daniel's always going to be Daniel. Arsenal... He either gets on a hot streak or he's not, but we're seeing more often that he's not quite there. But having said that, they're getting the results, Crow. They're still there. They're getting top 4s. I'm just not seeing where they getting that jump over your GenGs and I guess your V1s or even your FaZe clans, which obviously they didn't play this tournament. But I just put them that little bit rung below in terms of I don't know if they can win a regional right now.
I think they got fully exposed against GenG, to be completely honest. Space Station, I think, really lack, as a team, they lack team creativity. All of the players individually, if you had FIFA scorecards or whatever, or NBA scorecards, OJ, Daniel, and Arsenal are 98, 99 overall players. But it's they're all puzzle pieces that don't fit with each other, at least right now. So they're individually, their quality is enough to get them to the majors. But they need that last little step in creativity, maybe a selfless play. Maybe they slow the pace down for a bit, then speed it back up. Because GenG, and Torment was talking about how V1 just stopped playing to GenG's strengths when they realized GenG was really good at reading like plays in the air and reading the fast plays. Space Station just tried to ram their head into a brick wall over and over on GenG's defense, and it just never worked. They never got creative. The only way they scored was when Daniel decided he was going to do something slightly different. And the one game Space Station got, Daniel secured the win for them by himself. He straight up was last man, beat 2 of the GenG players, and then ripped a shot past the third one. Like he did it all himself. And I think it's just because Daniel's really probably the most creative one on the team. So they need to find a way to creatively incorporate LJ, because LJ's stats are a lot lower than I think most people would expect a player of his caliber to be. I mean, I have OJ on my fantasy team, and I'm contemplating putting him on the bench.
Okay, I was waiting for what... I was wondering where this was coming from, and now it all makes sense. It's the LJ fantasy take. I get you, Cam.
Fantasy's just taking a hold on me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be somewhat inclined to agree, but I'm gonna, you know what, Cam, I'm gonna stand my ground. And, you know, I am worried about Space Station, but when Sleeky puts the results up there, I think it just has a GenG's your daddy situation. They lost to them 4-1 both times. They lost to them this week 4-1 and last week in the semis 4-1 both times to GenG. So, I mean, look at all this green here. Anyone else but GenG, it seems like they're chilling. So maybe it's just a matchup thing.
I think, yeah, the Swiss stage, they're perfect. I mean, you get them on a Friday or a Saturday. They've got it covered. The thing I'm worried about is, yeah, when they do get to the best of 7s. I mean, obviously we don't have much to go by here. They've lost to GenG. They beat a Complexity and they beat an Optic. So they're beating those guys that are around sort of that 7, 8, 9 rankings. But we're just not seeing, you know, obviously we don't have a massive case study here. We've only got them playing GenG in terms of those top teams. But yeah, we're just not seeing them put it together once they get to the best of 7s. Obviously they beat a Complexity, but I want to see them. I think this team had, you know, we all know the potential this team has. Bringing in LJ, he was the hype man for this pickup, and Daniel obviously is, you know, he's the, you know, the Daniel Beast Mode first killer sort of tier list out there by themselves. So I've got high expectations for them. I think they won't be happy just, even though, you know, it's such a competitive region, they're getting top 4s. They take that, but they want to win regionals. You got to think, like, Daniel still hasn't won a North American regional, and they've been such a top team for so long. Like we talk about GenG not being grand final teams. Space Station still haven't won a regional, Crow. So where do you look at it from when you think about that? Like Big Dan,
I don't think
one
they
of the
will.
best players.
I think this roster has a big creative revolution. They get a bit more creative on the pitch. I think Space Station won't make the final next regional. I think they're just a perennial semifinal team.
But they're just
especially if they draw GenG. Yeah, if they draw GenG again, it's chalked. It's over.
If they dodge GenG,
see you next
they're all set. But they won't, because GenG's 1 seed and they're 4th, right? So don't they auto run into them eventually?
Depends.
Well, unless GenG bottle Swiss, yeah. Space Station will be fine in Swiss.
Stage. Yeah, there's a Swiss stage. Okay. But I mean, there is something to it, because I don't feel like LJ passed the eye test for me right now. Like, you know, like visually just watching, having cast LJ's games last season when I was with Oxygen, I have somewhat of a bias where it's like, okay, I know what to expect when I watch an LJ game. And I thought it would just, you know, transfer right into Space Station's playstyle, and it doesn't seem to be clicking as well yet. And I'm not concerned, like, as a Space Station fan, because it is a long season. It's still early. But, you know, GenG definitely have their number. So it's hard for me to, you know, it's hard for me to say they won't ever win a regional. It's hard. Like, Daniel's on the team, Cam. Daniel. Like, this is Daniel we're talking about. I have so much confidence in him. He's so impressive. And then you surround him with LJ and Arsenal. I just think they're too talented not to figure it out, especially when you have Chrome behind them.
Looking at their past tournament lists, you know, the question, was LJ the correct move? Because you're looking at some of their results maybe this is, of course, near the end of the year. This is a little biased here of me, but they've got quite a lot more first, second, thirds, top 4s with the old roster. And with LJ, there's a lot of blue in there.
I mean, obviously it is early days, but when you're looking at a team composition, you know, like you look at a V1, like you know, we talk about beast mode. He's a difference. But when you get to those big game 7s or, you know, the best of 7s, those big moments, V1, they just know, like, let's get the ball to this kid and let's let him go. Let's let him work with it. Let's work around him. And then you see Comp going for the bumps. Torment absolutely locks it down defensively. I think they've got it covered. But for some reason, when the pressure gets on for Space Station, it's almost like because they've got these two kids that can do anything, that Daniel's still that go-to player. And then LJ seems to just sort of go into his shell a little bit. He's less, you know, impactful on the field, and maybe it's that sort of FaZe clan situation where you've got like an AJ and a first killer where you need two balls, and you know you've got two on-ball players that want to be, you know, there making the plays, but they don't have that sort of V1 situation where Com's happy to push forward, go for the demos, Torment's happy to, you know, sit back, play defensively. I mean, this could be just recency bias. It's easy to say, you know, V1 weren't really in the picture last regional, and now they've stepped up, but maybe it is that, like, you know, you can't have X amount of superstars on a team. Sometimes you just need that one go-to, and then maybe LJ's struggling to sort of play around the Daniel factor in those big moments.
Well, yeah, because what do you do when Daniel, every time he gets the ball, he pops it up, starts an air dribble, gets a flip reset. You're like, okay, now where do I sit? Should I go forward? Should I go behind him? Should I just take the ball off of you like GenG does? Like Chronic's like, I'll get a flip reset, and Jack's like, I got it, and he just rips it off his car. You know, it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's difficult when you have someone like so much talent on one team. It really is, because you know you don't really have, like, in the NBA when you have LeBron on your team, you just give the ball to LeBron and you kind of just work around it. And I feel like at Space Station you could do that. You give the ball to all three of them and you could build a team around them individually. Although I do think Arsenal is better moving forward. I'd like to see Daniel kind of slide into that third man role, which I think he already is. On. I know, but maybe just like a little bit more time. Because like I said, we're only seeing them lose to GenG right now. So I have a hard time being like, okay, the Space Station move didn't work. It's chalk. They're going to make a roster move. You know, as long as they make Rotterdam, I think they're all right, which I think they will. Like, I don't think, I can't see them losing outside of a semifinals unless they drew like a top four, like a G2 FaZe, GenG again, or I think it's just them three. For me, that I would worry beating Space Station.
I think to give Chrome some credit as well, GenG is the one team that they have the least experience against. So in terms of, you know, working out how to play against them, every other North American team they've played 800 million times. So they've probably got them a little bit more figured out. And maybe on game day, they still don't really know what GenG is going to do because they might be playing a little bit different on game day than what they're doing in stream. So there is that factor. But yeah, I don't know. I think we, you know, just going back to that sort of team of superstars, we haven't really seen it work, apart from maybe you're looking at Europe right now with the Jorius, Oli, Archie combo.
Yeah.
But again, that could just still be that peak. Like we saw FaZe Clan last regional, which they did in the first last season as well. The first regional last season. The AJ, with AJ, they absolutely popped off, dominated. Everyone's gone, oh, this is a team of soups. Like, how are they going to lose from here? And then they were just sort of around the mark, but not really, you know, dominating after that. So maybe we'll see that with, you know, EU as well, with the Oxygen team, because we're still, I think you still need those role players. You know, when push comes to shove, it's all about that structure. And V1 really have that. They have like the most defined 3 players on the pitch. So that really helps them in those big moments, those game 7s and stuff. Everyone knows what they're doing. Whereas, you know, when you have that team of just 3 on the ball players, I feel like it can get messy. You know, everyone wants the ball. Everyone wants to be the person that wants to, you know, make the big play, hit the flip resets like Crow was saying. So that's a similar situation with Space Station, I think. And maybe it's just going to take a bit more time for LJ to find his groove. But as you said, we're just seeing GenG game best of 7s. So a small case study for Space Station so far. Maybe they do just clear everyone else, as everyone likes to say, in terms of the North American teams, if you're not putting GenG as a North American team. But they just don't look as great in these game 7s. I don't know if that's what you were saying. Do you think they look better with Reddles?
I think no matter what, I think my question was more, if you're going to replace Reddles with somebody, was LJ the one? Should it have been someone else? You know, who else would have been available? And that's all very hypothetical, and I probably should have talked about it 3 shows ago when roster moves were happening. But I don't know. I definitely think Chrome has got a lot of work in the lab to do with GenG replays. That man is going to be studying and have 4 pages on GenG probably next time they play.
Yeah, I definitely don't think you can just throw out Swiss and their dominance in that, which I kind of seem to have. It's like, okay, yeah, they make it through Swiss, and then it's lose to GenG, but with their dominance, yeah, it is. But with their domination in the Swiss, I think they'll figure it out. See if they can dodge a GenG matchup this weekend. Just keep an eye out for that. But I think we should talk about the elephant in the room, which is NRG. And I want to ask you guys, are they back? CJ, is NRG back? Can I go get my NRG hat? I have my NRG mouse pad right here.
I don't know. They in terms of who they beat this weekend, they beat an Optic who just go to Game 7 with everyone, go to Game 5, and they beat a GenG, which is weird. The outlier there is the fact that they swept GenG. I'm not sure what happened, but then also you look at GenG Swiss, they also then nearly got swept by Axel. They were a game away from getting swept by them as well. So clearly GenG weren't playing well. I mean, that's like the consistent sort of factor there, that it wasn't just a one-off. They just weren't playing well in that Swiss. But then NRG, they beat an Optic. Is that just like the NRG of old, Crow? I know that, playing NRG, it's almost like this fear factor that they used to have back in the day. Anytime you saw those names on the pitch, you're like, all right, we're in for a big day. But then as they sort of have dropped off, I know that who's a Torment was sort of speaking about it last week. He said they're just a lot less intimidating. Teams aren't as scared of NRG as they once were. But maybe that did come back for Optic, because they didn't look great in that Game 7 that Garrett hit the winner on. But then V1 dismantled them earlier on. Having said that, there were overtimes, but
no, I think NRG don't really.
I don't know.
I don't know if they have that aura about them just yet. I think Optic's loss to NRG was fully Optic's problems. And maybe some of those unforced errors did come out of like pressure and nerves, whether that's pressure that Optic are putting on themselves to perform or pressure they felt from MRG's intimidating aura. But I don't know. Like you look at their bracket, like I honestly think NRG, like they did beat Dignitas in their Swiss, who they lost to last week. So I think you have to give them a little bit of credit there. But they got matchups that they're fairly familiar with, and they're very familiar with losing to V1. So they obviously lost that one. But I don't know. Like I think this always comes up with NRG, because it happened at Worlds too. People were talking about Mickey bracket, NRG, this, that, and
here are their wins.
Every single time, people are like, it's hard to give NRG credit for games unless they're beating somebody in the top 4.
So they 3-1 Dig. They beat Rogue. So 2 teams outside the top 10. And then they beat GenG, obviously, which was their big win. Optic in Game 7. So GenG and Optic, I would say, are 2 teams inside the top 10 that they have wins on. And then their other wins last split was Rogue and PK. Are Rogue and PK even in the top 16 right now?
Let me look. They are tied.
Yeah.
They have 6 points with PK. They barely made it into Regional 3.
Okay, so both of them are borderline top 16 right now.
Yeah.
And then
I just don't know if it's that convincing. I don't think NRG are necessarily back. I think they drew a playable bracket. We'll say that. Where they had to not play bad. They still had to play to a baseline like pro level that we know that Garrett, Justin, and Squishy are capable of. But I still saw in their gameplay a lot of question marks that I don't think they're going to be addressing or changing, because even in Garrett's interview, he was talking about how, what we needed the whole time was just to play the way we always do. And so I think NRG are just
scary to listen to.
They're going to go, oh, like we're just going to go back to what we usually do, but better. And that doesn't really give me much confidence in a new NRG. It's just the same NRG, but are they peaking or not?
I wish we had direct here, CJ, because I want to know how many times NRG has scored more than 2 goals in a game. I think that their wins are 2-1 in overtime or 1-0 in overtime, and that's it. It's not like they're winning like 5-0, or at least like it feels like NRG get up on you, and then they just don't commit to anything ever. Especially Squishy. If you watch Squishy on the broadcast, this is personal relationships aside because I'm a huge NRG fan, but this is like, if you watch Squishy on the screen, he will literally just drive around the field, go towards the ball, force the other person to hit it, and then just drive back for boost. And that's it. Like, there's no extending the play. There's no, demo chasing. It just seems like NRG's goal is to not make a mistake, wait for you to make one, we're going to score, and then we'll never commit to anything and make you beat all three of us, which is fine until you get to, like, top 10, top 8, where the teams are too good now to do that. You can't do that anymore. And I know that everyone was saying, I've seen change, and I love NRG. I just didn't see change. I think they can win with their play style. I don't think they can be a top 5 team to make major. I don't think you can have success at the major or even confidently make a major with that play style. So are they back? For me, it's no. Unfortunately, I need to see more, because what I saw this weekend is the same that I've been seeing for 6 months or so, which is like, don't get scored on and we'll win.
I think the best analogy I can give for NRG of what they did this weekend, it was like a wounded dog. They were backed into a corner and they just kicked and fought and scrapped their way out. Like, nothing was pretty about what they did this weekend, but they just, you look at Garrett's reaction to that Game 7 OT. Like, they needed, like, you know what I mean? They were just backed into a corner.
That is huge.
They had no other option this weekend other than to put in a huge result to get a top 4, at least, put themselves around the mark to make the major. So that's all it looked like. I think the play style went out the window. They said, let's not concede. As you said, they backed it up. They had 3 guys in net, making sure they just didn't make mistakes, and then they just fought as hard as they could for that one goal, and then they were just hanging on. So, yeah, it just felt like they just... nearly the will to win got them over the line more than a new play style or more than, Epic Johnny coming in and completely shaking it up. I don't think they really changed much, apart from maybe like the mental, I don't know, refresh that maybe, you get rid of someone. Okay, now we're all of a sudden going to play well. That placebo, I guess, Crow, that you can get just making any change, which is sort of what Sis spoke about. I think they just need to make any change, whether that was wearing some different undies or something on a regional.
Eat a different flavor Pop-Tart in the morning,
Absolutely.
like something, Maybe. I think we won't see any impact of any real impact for like playstyle wise via Epic Johnny's coaching for at least a split. Like, it takes time, especially with a roster of players that have been around and have been at the top for as long as Garrett, Justin, and Swishy have been. Like, they're gonna have the ways that they think about the game, and they have habits. I believe this came up on CJCJ's show, actually, was that like you want to try new stuff in scrims, but when it comes down to the moment when you need to win a game, all your habits kind of just come back under the pressure.
Exactly. And
I feel like all of NRG's habits, because frequently they're not winning by much, or they need to score to like tie the game because they haven't had offense all game. All those habits kind of just come flooding back in, and I think it's going to take a lot of time for really any coach, even someone like Epic Johnny, to get them to do something new in scrims and translate it to matches, even in those really crucial moments.
Yeah, I think absolutely it'll take Epic Johnny some time. I didn't expect to see a change. Like, I didn't expect NRG to come out this weekend and blow doors with this whole new playstyle. That's not what I expected.
That's what some fans expected, and that's what I did see on a few social media areas.
That's why they're fans. I can't talk to them. The hardcores, the people watching this show, I think they know that like a complete turnaround is really, really difficult after years of being a coach. Like, how long was Sis their coach? They had the tweet like 3 years, I think, or was it 2 years? Something like that.
I think it was 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 years into 1 week, a switch, that ain't gonna happen. But I do commend the NRG team, like you said, CJ, coming out, putting their heart on the field, Garrett getting the relief, and hopefully that can get them out of what I think is like their biggest hurdle right now is their mental. I don't want to say mental state, like they're in disarray, but kind of like when you're winning a lot and then all of a sudden you get knocked down, it's really difficult to get 3 people and a coach all back on the same page, back on a winning. Like, it's difficult to like herd the cat, so to speak. So I think that they did a great job of rallying this weekend and giving themselves a shot for the major and building blocks. It's tough to see with their play style and how quick of a turnaround that they are trying to have. Even with Johnny, I mean, I think Johnny, I think that it'll be interesting to see what he does as a coach. I don't know how much coaching experience he has. However, he was Justin's former teammate. I do think he has good knowledge of the game. He was a pro player at one point, so obviously he has an idea of what's going on. It's not like, he doesn't have any experience. But do you guys think that NRG, with the playstyle they have a shot at even contending for Worlds this year if they don't make a playstyle switch? Because for me, it just seems like it's not. I don't think it's possible. Unless you want to win these overtimes and these 1-0s all year, which is just I'm gonna have no hair by the time we get to Worlds.
I don't know about Worlds. In terms of looking a little bit closer, in terms of the major, I think what they do have going for them in the third major is that there's 9 teams right now, or you look at sort of, I guess, 3rd to 9, who are all sort of vying for that spot. I think V1, they haven't wrapped up the major, but they basically have locked it in as long as they don't completely bomb out somehow. Like, I think statistically V1 have probably got it, but there's so much pressure on about 6 teams right now for the major spot next regional. I think what NRG have going for them is that no one really, I think everyone's written them off, really. Although they've got the top 4 now, there's always going to be the pressure from the super fans, the NRG super fans, obviously. But, you talk to the players or the NA teams around, no one thinks they're any good anymore. They think they need to change, they're washed up, they're not going to win. And I think that really even helped them this weekend. They have that sort of underdog mentality that we talk about. They were just scrapping.
Energy, the underdogs. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a rare situation, but I think they'll love that. And I think going to this regional, or the next regional, maybe they'll have expectations that they should be there, but I really think they'll be like, well, no one thinks we're going to do it, so let's see what we can do. And you might see some other teams that underperform that are thinking we should be there at the major. I mean, you look at a G2, they're still tied 5th. We saw what we did this weekend. They didn't make it out of Swiss. They obviously lost some game 5s. You could call it unlucky, but now the pressure's on them. They're a top team. They're we were talking about still the number 1 team. They were a grand finalist at Worlds, so they're still right there, but they're in the exact same position as an NRG that everyone thinks terrible and should make a roster change. So I think you'd rather nearly be an NRG in that situation in terms of the mindset, not of course like the team. You'd rather be G2, but that mindset has to help them, Crow. Like if they adopt that underdog, and knowing that everyone else is going to be feeling that pressure, maybe they can come out on top next regional.
They're the underdog that got backed into a corner, and now they bought themselves some breathing room. So honestly, this next regional, they probably have the most going for them that they've had in a while. I think you make a lot of great points, and oh man, I don't know if NRG are going to snipe the 5th spot for the major. With Furia and G2 there, I don't know.
Don't you think they got exposed a little bit this weekend, guys?
I mean,
a little bit by the demo
their
plays.
Gameplay. That's just V1. V1 is literally the NRG nightmare. Like they have bad dreams about that.
And just do the same. I mean, not just do the same. Like
no one can do it like whatever. V1. No one can copy Calm.
But it is saying to the world, like, hey, NRG struggle to deal with this demo style. Even Calm in the interview went back in and was like, yeah, we've been doing the same thing. We demo them for the past 5 times we played them. We do the same thing and it works.
I think everyone knows that as well. Even Jack was saying he's like, they are so free. They don't jump, they don't dodge, and they don't move. Like they just so.
Right, so what's stopping everyone?
Yeah, I don't know why no one else is doing it. Obviously, V1 are adopting it. They knows about it because he got about 26 demos in the game or something absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, this seems like and you're with the moves. You're alluding to that problem with NRG in terms of their playstyle right now. Let's sit in net. Let's not make a mistake. And they literally are sitting in net. So Com's like, well, there's a triple demo because no one's going to move.
It is easy to demo. Guy in chat. Yeah. Acting like it's easy to demo for pro teams, it is easy to just say, okay, let's have our demo guy go demo people. Like, that's a game plan, bro. What do you mean I'm acting like it easy? It is. I mean, it's not easy to connect.
Especially if you sit there.
Yeah, it's easy to have
you just drive up behind their third man. You make sure you stop boosting so they don't hear it right before you get up to them, and then they just die.
I'm not saying that like what Calm does is not difficult. It is, but when you're talking about like pros and playstyle changes, it's very easy to at least have that playstyle on retainer, like a demo heavy playstyle. That's something I'm sure all pro teams practice. So
I thought
Like,
Arsenal would be bumping a lot more as well, because remember he had that stretch of a season where he was the demo leader. He was very, very physical, and I think that was with Reynolds Daniel at the time. Maybe it was before, but there were plenty of players in North America who will bump if they need to.
yeah, it's one of those, bumping is a risk reward thing that teams basically toy with. It's like, how greedy can we get for how long? How long can we have someone out of the play, disrupting? And I think for V1, because of, like, when you take Calm out of the picture, look at what V1 have. They have Beast Mode, who can get to any ball in the world with probably 12 boost, and the kid can make a save, a touch, whatever. And then you have Torment, who doesn't let anything, outplay him in the backfield. He can hold it down, buy time better than anyone else. So for Calm, it's like, what are you scared of? You have the guy who never gets beat and the guy who can get to any ball behind you. It's like, you have the freedom and the liberty to do whatever. So I understand that other teams don't have what V1 has, that ability to be able to just send a player to demo. But I think Energy at least did get exposed a little bit this weekend. Not only, I found the Calm interview kind of funny or alarming, like he was just calling them out on stream with the demo stuff, and he set a record for the demos. Like, it was kind of like Energy got demoed and lost. And I think that when a loss that, like, well illustrated happens, that it can catch on and people can kind of, if you're
think
struggling,
you got put on display a little bit.
yeah, if you're struggling against the team and you know that team gets tilted or struggles with it, and the other team just did it like last split, then I think that that's something, if you see them coming up, that's in the back of your mind. It has to be, as well as NRGs, right? I mean, it should be. Energy's a team that you're like these bubble teams looking, they have to get through, right, to get to where they want. And if you see V1 going off demoing and not making Energy look kind of foolish, I wouldn't say they look foolish, but he kind of, I don't know, he kind of clowned on him a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, it was rough. I don't know. I feel like at NRG, we speak about it. They've been together so long. They just don't really have that set play style. I remember there was a time they also tried to implement the bump sort of style, but they don't, like, V1. They have they have the guy. Com's the guy. He's the bump guy. Whereas I feel like when NRG try and change a play style, it's not. It's really like a whole team thing. And then all of a sudden everyone's trying to bump, and now they lose that defense that at least they've been known for. So I think that before, NRG, they were just quicker than everyone. They were more mechanical than everyone. They were beating everyone to the ball. Now, obviously, you don't have that. You've got this new wave of young talent coming in. And I think the difference, when you look at who's winning regionals, you've just got to have that X factor. And I just don't see where that X factor is coming from unless Justin, wound back the clock and peaked out of his mind. Because obviously he's still a phenomenal player. But, you compare Justin to what like a Beast Mode's doing, or what you see a Daniel doing, or a First Killer. It's just still, they're still in a tier of their own right now, those young mechanical guys. And maybe that's whether they, they don't have the support or they don't have that other offensive prowess. I mean, even you make a great point, like looking at Space Station with Arsenal now, he wants to be the bump guy, but where does he fit in if you've got two on-ball sort of players like Daniel and LJ? Daniel might have to play third man, which, he might like to do, but at some point he's going to want to come forward, then who covers him? So just looking at how the different dynamics work, even, FaZe Clan now, they've got Mist. They know that he's going to be back, so they can do whatever they want. Supercool doesn't have to sit in net the whole time, which is what he did with AJ and First Killer on the team. He can now be more offensive. So, yeah, I love looking at sort of the actual dynamic of team, because, a lot of the community is just like, well, this person's better than that player, so that person should be replaced. But it's a lot more about, what they're doing on the pitch and what play style they have. So, NRG Crow... Yeah, do they need to find like that X factor? They need to implement a bit of the youth, like GenG did with Chronic.
I mean, it's weird to say this, but I think Energy's X factor this season is Garrett. I think his striking ability and his shooting ability has been really incredible. He just isn't getting that many opportunities because Energy don't get to play much offense. So they need to unlock Garrett and get him more involved. And I don't know if that means that Justin has to play selflessly and then wait for like just opportunities to solo, or if Squishy needs to be doing more like off of the ball. I don't know what it is, but I thought Garrett's striking has actually looked just so peak. Like you would switch, like you'd wind back the clock a few years, switch Justin and Garrett's name tags, and you would think you were watching like Justin gameplay, but it's actually Garrett this season. So I think Garrett's the solution for NRG, and he's he's trying to be like their team captain, their team leader. The heart of the team. I think Garrett's kind of always tried to be that. So I think if Garrett's feeling well and doing well and leading, then NRG have a real shot next regional.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a boomer. I don't really think NRG need a roster change. I just think they need a different play style. And if a player causes that, fine. If you want to argue, okay, a player is the reason that would cause a change, that's okay. But I think, when I see Squishy, I'm not calling out Squishy saying his play was bad earlier, where he drives towards the ball and he forces it. That's kind of just NRG's play style. They like to force things a lot of the time. They don't challenge, they force. So it's just like, they'll go towards the ball and make the opponent think that they're about to challenge them, but then they don't commit their car and they let them give it to their teammate. That's like NRG's whole, most of their thing. They do a lot of other stuff, but that's one of their big things. And I think they need to start challenging that stuff instead of this force, because a lot of things, chaos can happen from 50s. And that's where a lot of these players shine, is when you have these challenges in the back corners ping off of all these ceilings, and then it coincides with like a mid-boost spawn and Daniel being over there. That's when the flare and the mechanics can happen really well, I think. And when NRG's playing super structured and controlled, yes, they're in control the whole time because they're forcing everything to each other, but you're allowing the other team to almost feel like they're in control with how much offense they're on. So I think NRG's issue, whatever like cause or change that you think NRG needs to make, for me, it's whatever gets you more offense. Whether it's challenging the ball better, purposely losing it to your third man like the Middle Eastern teams do, or something to give yourself more catalyst on offense, because right now it's very, unless you have Garrett doing his crazy solos where he beats two, or a quick passing play that doesn't get saved, which it seems like, unfortunately, all of NRG, the passing plays are great, but they're getting saved. That's just how it is nowadays. Beast mode's pre-jumping top right. Sorry, Squishy. Like, it's just, the play was great, but the saves are there, and it's frustrating as an NRG fan and someone who has admired the players for so long, because I want them to just pop off. But it just seems like they're missing just a tiny bit, CJ. Not like a huge piece, just a little bit.
I think, at the same time, you can change play style, but, you guys have been a part of teams, and so have I, where sometimes it just gets stale. And even Jack spoke about this, going with GenG, picking up Noli and then getting Chronic. You say a change is as good as a holiday. If you make a change as little, it might not be, oh, this person's clearly the weak link, this person is the reason why we're not winning. It might just be any sort of move. You get that fresh, voice in there. And maybe this is what Johnny's doing. It makes you sort of more excited for scrims. I mean, if you've been scrimming with the same team for 2-3 years, you're just rocking up and you're sort of just going through the motions. And even if you're changing playstyle and stuff, you really just, I think it's so hard to maintain that spark and that edge that you're going to have. Yes. Whereas sometimes you get that new voice in there, or that even, I guess, we did, it was myself and Kami, when we picked up Fever. Like, he's a young kid. He just had that energy about him that we really fed off, and maybe that's what they need. Maybe Johnny's bringing that, like, energy to scrims. Like, just come on, guys, like, let's get excited about it. Well, yeah, so maybe that's what it is. Whereas, Caesar's obviously a great guy, but perhaps as that four-man team, they were just like, oh, let's change this, let's change that. And it wasn't fun anymore. And I think it's still a video game. You still want to have fun. And I think you might be able to change play styles and stuff, Crow, but I know you've been in that situation as well, where it just gets stale. And it's not anyone's fault. It's not, anyone clashing. It's just, you're not enjoying, I guess, the process as much as if you made a change and brought in that fresh idea, that fresh mind, then, you might find that, motivation again in that spark.
Yeah, you're just kind of like clocking in, clocking out. Mm-hmm. Oh, scrims are done. I have X amount of my day left. Let's hang out for a bit, play some ranked. Okay, scrims tomorrow, go to bed. Wake up, scrim. And then, like, it's been 3 months. And you're like, oh, it's been a season already? Oh. And it can become quite a blur when you get very used to anything. Like, when it becomes a habit, so many processes become automatic and you lose so much critical thinking and critical decision making. And I mean, maybe that's why FaZe always look like such a sharp team in North America. They just change their roster all the time.
Unfortunately, I mean, maybe First Killer's onto something, Cam.
He's always the sharpest kid in North America. Maybe there's
Yeah,
a
just
reason.
just continue. It's like a rotating door, like to get into the hospital. Just one after the other. Just keep it moving, and eventually you'll find success. I mean, I was phasing up last week.
Regional of a season.
What happened this week with FaZe, guys? What is going on? I was learning the logo, and I've even mastered it. I was ready to whip it out. Yeah, I was phased up last week.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah, see, there you go, CJ. So I was all phased up, and then, they got dropped by GenG a little bit. I think they were in shock. I thought it was kind of like sinister, but they showed the losing cams when FaZe lost, the player cams. It just seemed like they were all kind of shocked, as I was. I didn't think GenG was going to take that. If I remember right, it was like it was close until the last second in Game 7 for the FaZe clan, right? That FaZe series versus GenG.
Yeah, it was I think it was 2 quick goals for GenG.
FaZe was
Something
winning.
happened. That whole series was weird. I do agree with that. Like, I almost need to watch back the replays to understand why GenG suddenly just took a hold of the series. Because FaZe, it looked like it was going to be a repeat of the final. GenG didn't really play any different, and neither did FaZe. And with that considered, you'd think, oh yeah, FaZe 4-1 the last time both teams were playing this way, and it was just weird. I don't know.
CJ, do you think that EU players playing on this team is the reason why top teams are struggling with GenG right now? Because FaZe have lost to GenG and Space Station have lost to GenG. I mean, a lot of teams have lost to GenG, but the top NA teams in particular, Space Station twice now they've lost, and FaZe. I would put them 1 and 2 before the season, or 1 and 3 if you don't have 2 top 3 teams that GenG's just kind of having their way with. Do you think it's due to the European playstyles of Nolly and Jack maybe being a bit more reserved, catching the overzealous NA, or is it something else?
I think it's nearly the opposite. I reckon EU, the general play style, it's challenge heavy. I mean, you look at sort of how Oxygen are playing. It is ridiculous. They are all in 3-man offense every time.
Oh, they're crazy.
And they're all rotating so fast that they can get back. And I think that, Jack and Nolly, they're such smart players that it's nearly, you look at like an NRG who is sort of fostered the, not the city net play style, but basically that sort of situation where, now NA's having to resort to bumps to clear people out of net, which is sort of less prominent in EU. So I nearly think that in NA you get more time because it's a lot more solo play heavy region compared to EU, which is like ping, 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 3-man pass plays all the time, and it's nearly three-man offense, 3-man defense, and everyone's just rotating fast. So I think that even Jack saying he comes to NA, all of a sudden he's got more time on the ball. Jack's a ones main, this is beautiful. He's not going to throw the ball away. Which a lot of the time a lot of North American teams do. They go for a solo play, doesn't really work. Then the other team gets a turn of solo play. But Jack, because he's got that ones experience, he sees that time, he sees that fake challenge coming in, like you said with NRG. They throw the first man fake for the other guy to get the free hit. Well, GenG, they're not falling for that. Noli's going to sit behind the ball every day of the week because he's used to doing that from EU. He's used to guys challenging him because that's all they do in Europe. They're always on the ball. They come to North America, these guys have more time, and Jack's saying, I'm loving this situation. This suits him perfectly because now he can really think about it. When someone's not challenging, you get more time to sort of assess the situation and work out if you're going to pop around them. And you just look at GenG playing, they're always hitting the sidewall, they're always getting 2 on it and then following it up. Every single time, they're never really throwing it away. The only time they did that, that I saw was last regional in the grand finals against FaZe, where Jack said he expected FaZe to be always on, which is more of the European style compared to the rest of the North American teams. And they were they started to panic. They just assumed that, first kill is pre-jumping something, let's get it around and let's hit it around. But that wasn't the situation. And maybe they adapted this time, knowing that they do play different, because I think in scrims they just ball chase. They're always on and they're expecting them to challenge. And then on game day they are playing a bit more reserved, like a sort of regular style. So maybe that's the difference in the GenG matchup against FaZe. But I think Jack and Nolly, they love this because they're just getting more time to do what they want to on the ball. And they're not really falling for this, first man fake challenge or falling for that 50-50 because they seem used to it. So credit to them.
Yeah, I mean, possession-oriented gameplay is really becoming just so not even. It used to be important, but now it's mandatory. If you're throwing away
Yeah.
possession, like it's over. Like, oops, I accidentally dumped the ball down in the midfield to beast mode. Oh,
Counterattack.
great! You just cost us the whole game, dude. What are you doing? You know, it's so important now that if you're gonna make touches, and if you're gonna boom the ball away, at least make it so nobody can get it or it's near your teammate. And I think that's like what Europe does really well. They might be blasting the ball around the map, but it's going closer to their teammate than it is to the opponent, so they can keep doing that over and over, and it becomes more of like a positioning thing and maintaining high speed and on average getting more quality touches than your opponent. Everyone's still getting a lot of touches, but yours will be a little bit better, and then maybe you'll get that opportunity for an isolation play. And in North America, I think those isolation plays happen more often because people are more willing to just like either hand the ball over or decide, okay, we're going to slow it down and I'm going to choose to take this ball. And if you don't succeed, you do hand possession, or you basically drive the ball all the way up to the goal line, perhaps. And this is what happened with Space Station and GenG, is like LJ or Daniel would drive the ball by themselves all the way to the GenG goal. GenG would save it, collect the ball in their half, and then it was their turn to do the same, but then they would just do it better. Or they would set up a bit differently and wait for the better time to do that. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
As an NA fan, I'm concerned. I'm not gonna lie.
I think FaZe have the capability to play the right way. I think they just something happened. I really think NA fans, when they look to the future of like playing threes properly, I think this FaZe roster is actually it. They just happened to lose today in quarters.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I felt like they just had an off day. They weren't connecting as well as usual. I don't know if that was something GenG were doing. It just felt like it wasn't the same FaZe in form that we were seeing in the regional. FaZe kind of seemed like a mini Oxygen to me at times, where they have that ability to, ping each other around. I do think Oxygen are just, I'm biased because I cast them, but they just look ridiculous. And when I watch NA, I agree. I see the same things. More space, more time. And that, when I look at Oxygen, makes me even more concerned. Like, when you give a team that's, playing, if you're familiar with, like, the Barcelona European football style, tiki-taka, or whatever they call it. Yeah, that's like what Oxygen do. It's just these little hits to each other all the time with whatever amount of boost they have. And I feel like FaZe can do that, but it's just not as automatic for them right now.
I think, visually Oxygen, like that's the best gameplay I've seen, like, for, I don't know. Like, right now they're playing just the best Rocket League visually.
Ever.
So I think if they can they replicate that, on the world stage at a major, stuff like that. That's what we need to see. Can they replicate it this week? I mean, I'm really glad that FaZe did fall in the quarters. I actually predicted them to come 5th to 8th. I picked them as the best performing quarterfinal loser. And I was getting flamed for that. I was like, how can you predict FaZe to not win? They clear NA, the first regional. So I'm glad we saw that, because this is what happened last season as well. FaZe absolutely dominated the first regional. They went 3-0 in Swiss. They didn't look like losing. Everyone's thinking, this team is going to win all 9 regionals. And then, as you can see, teams adapt very quickly to how they're playing. So it is super close in NA. It's all about, who can step up week to week, and it's a marathon, not a sprint, as we say. You want to keep getting those top 4s, top 2s, top 1s. But yeah, I like your Oxygen pick, because I'm loving what I'm seeing from them. But we sort of saw it with Dig as well last season. They were looking really good, and then they couldn't really replicate it. And then the team issues start coming in. So
Oxygen.
It's going to be a close battle.
Oxygen are scary. I'll be interested to see how they perform next week. But
and I hope they don't fall off a cliff, because I like watching the way they play, and hope they can keep it up. But there's a lot of other good teams in Europe too. We'll see.
Yeah, NA in Europe, all good. Speaking of NA in Europe, we got SSA representing in NA Furia, finally making some noise this week, Cam. A little bit earlier than I thought. I thought it'd take them a little bit longer, but they ended up falling short of what I thought they would do this weekend, with a loss in the quarterfinals to
V1.
V1.
Yeah,
I was a bit worried too, because like we're talking about how the EU players came over to NA and adapted so well, but Furia and like Complexity, which still has one EU player on it, aren't really adapting all that well. They're doing okay, but it's people. I remember when Furia announced they're moving to NA, they were like, "Oh, Furia are just gonna like be in the grand finals every time. Furia are gonna dominate." They're still adjusting.
Soon TM.
which is a little surprising to me. I don't know what it is.
I just the problem with NA right now is like Furia. Yeah, I don't know why everyone sort of wrote them off. They're still a world class team. They're a top, you'd say they're a top 10 team in the world. It could be top 6, yeah, could be higher. But the problem with it is, you get to Champ Sunday, it's single alien best of 7. Like, good luck. And if you've got, you've got a situation where it might be just Yan versus Beast Mode, who's feeling it today? And I mean, Beast Mode's been feeling it all weekend long, but yeah, went to 7. I love seeing the adaptation though. V1 winning a couple games timeout, Furia win 3, and then straight back the other way, which is sort of like the grand finals. We had a 1 game win GenG, then 3 to V1, then a couple to GenG the other way. So I like seeing the adaptation that we're seeing from teams right now. But Furia, it's just so tough. I don't think they're looking any worse than they did when they were getting top 4 at Worlds, when they were winning Gamers 8 or getting top 6 at majors. But it's just so hard to consistently show up. You might have one off day and that could ruin your whole split.
Yeah, I just know that Furia at majors is going to perform better than like half of these NA teams at majors. And if Furia is not at the major, then we don't get to see that.
Exactly. Cam, you stole my thunder.
Oh.
Gosh darn it. I was going to say the same thing. I think they're a LAN
You're
team.
a known Furia fanboy on top of an OXG fan.
Big
and
Furia fanboy.
And just absolute Furia bias over there.
But in my defense, their playstyle, this aggressive, I'm going to take it to you style confidently, I don't think is such a good online gameplay style, but at LAN, I think it's fantastic because that's, I think, when the environment changes. Like, Beast Mode isn't in his room, comfortable at home anymore. He's out on stage, all these players are on stage, and I think that environment change benefits Furia's playstyle a lot. It could be complete craziness that I'm spewing, so you guys will have to think, is there any validity to this? Because I'm convinced that their playstyle is way better on LAN. They just have to make it there. That's their big thing.
I don't know if it's their playstyle is better on LAN. It's just they can replicate online just as well on LAN, which so many teams change. Once they get to LAN, like everything mixes up, which is, sort of the question mark about Oxygen. Can they do that on LAN? But the thing about Fury is, they go online. They're just so aggressive and they're just peaking like their mechanics are looking so strong. They get on LAN, they're doing exactly the same thing. Yan on LAN, excuse the rhyme, is literally incredible. The problem right now, when you look at the rankings, is that they're 14th, they're equal 7th with Optic. The teams above them, they're going to have to beat someone above them. G2 are 1 point ahead. It's nearly, Space Station are 9 points ahead. So to get top 5, to make the major, it's nearly them versus G2, who's going to place higher next regional. Which is crazy. Whoever places higher wins. If they place level, if they both drop out in the quarters, then it's going to be G2. Obviously, NRG can play upset to that. Optic Gaming would have to peak on what we've seen so far. But yeah, Furia, it doesn't really matter how well they're going right now. You look at the points. It's nearly, they might have to beat a G2 next regional or place ahead of them. But G2 still, for my mind, is still a top 2, top 3 team at least. FaZe, GenG, maybe G2 for 3rd.
Yeah, we've gone how long?
It's
an hour and a half into the show without talking about G2. That's kind of crazy.
It's crazy. I don't know. Like Fury, it doesn't matter how well they're going right now. They could still, they could go incredibly and then drop to, a FaZe or a GenG again in like a quarters, and then we don't see them in a major. It doesn't mean they're not top 5. It just really is like, the luck of the draw, how you get the bracket and who you play on the day and who's peaking on the day. So they've got it tough. I mean, they're right there. They're right around the mark for that 5th spot. The problem is the 5th spot has about 6 teams trying to get there, and G2 is one of them.
Yeah, G2 the leaders of the NA depth 5 through 8 right now. I'll just say it right now. I think G2 are not going to miss the major. Like, they're just going to absolutely peak next regional, like, because they have to. Okay. They're a team that can handle that pressure. They're used to it. They're used to being on top. This was a fluke regional. They drew a really tough Swiss bracket, and they just missed a few game 5s. It is what it is, but they're going to hit the hard regain. I know it.
Yeah, and J2 are going to be in that 5th spot for the Swiss matchup in a few weeks' time. Likely playing Shopify. So they're not going to have the easiest Swiss matchups due to that loss. I do think, though, G2 have to run the gauntlet next week, right? How far away are they? in terms of points. We
They're
just
only,
saw that.
like one or
equal
two.
fifth.
Yeah.
So
They're fifth?
they're-
Okay,
I think
so
a
they're not that bad.
semifinals might be enough for them, depending on how some of the other matches go.
Yeah,
Is
I
there a
think
chance for a teams
Tiebreaker?
being tied? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
There is a
I mean,
tiebreaker, right?
if it's NRG G2 and they both drop in quarters or even maybe semis, depending on who places above them, then we could have some tiebreakers. And we saw that last season. We had Space Station versus Complexity. Winner makes the major, and Space Station dropped that. That was the first split. Complexity made it in North America. So that'd be exciting. I love that one series best of 7. Whoever
it's
wins
terrifying.
makes a major. Hopefully, I think we have to get, because of how close everything is. I'm nearly thinking it's just destiny that we're going to get a tiebreaker for the 5th spot.
I think tiebreakers
Yeah.
are perfectly fine, and I think they should maybe, hopefully with this format, they're more common because they are exciting.
entertainment.
Like if
Yeah.
I hear there's a tiebreaker match happening at a random time in the middle of the week,
It's like Monday. Yeah.
I'll go get popcorn. I'll like set up.
Yeah.
I'll have it played up on the couch, ready to go. Like I'm gonna freak out.
Oh yeah, we do have a tiebreaker for the regional. 26 Rising, FOB, and there's another team in there.
Soul?
Seoul, yeah. Those 3 teams are going to be battling it out for the last 2 spots. Seoul is in the lower bracket, so they only get 1 chance. FOB and what was the other team I said? 26 Rising
26 Rising.
are in the upper bracket. They get 2 chances. So that will be one tiebreaker to keep an eye out for this week. But yeah, for G2, is it weird to say I'm not concerned? Like, I kind
No,
of
because
just...
I'm not. I don't think true G2
Yeah.
fans should be concerned. Okay, now if you're one of those Reddit G2 fans, like maybe you're making a post about it right now, typing it up. Oh, do G2 need to make a change? Question mark.
What if they lose, though? Are you going to be that Reddit guy, CJ? Are you
Man.
going to be calling for a
I'm
change?
worried. I'm worried. If I'm G, you know, you want to say, oh, no, we'll be right, but you're still worried. I think even you talk about Reddit. I saw a comment saying like it's weird as a G2 fan, like not being worried about Swiss, even though like it's such a, you know, it's so strong. You just
yeah.
you just know we're gonna make top 8, and then all of a sudden they don't make it. Like I think Reddit nearly were overconfident. They were like, you just feel like G2 are always gonna make top 4. This is the first time they've slipped up, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy to do that again, but yeah, you just think with the quality of G2, the team they are, that they'll make it. But I thought that this weekend, I thought there's no way they're not making top 4. Even those Game 5s, Crow and Swiss, like they had 3 of them. You were thinking, okay, this one they'll win. Okay, this one they'll win. And then it's like round 5, and then it got to Game 5 OT, and you're like, okay, this is the time. Or actually, I think it was Game 4 against GenG. But
Yeah, it was a 0-second goal. It definitely should have been a game 5, and then they just tragic.
Sleegy, do you have the Swiss results on you by chance? So we can take, because G2's losses, I think, were against like
Fury
top
and
teams.
SSG.
Yeah,
They
and then
did
the
sweep
5th one
V1.
was bad. The 5th one was a good team too. Yeah, GenG. All right, so
Yeah, that's
their
probably-
loss is Furious Space Station GenG.
The GenG loss was clip of the week easily. It's probably #1 clips viewed on Twitch.
Why? What happened in it? Did I miss something?
Did you not see?
the chronic 0-second goal, Game 4.
Oh yeah. I saw that 0-second. That was clean. I was happy for Chronic. I was surprised it went in. It was like slow motion. Usually those slow motion shots, like someone comes out of nowhere last second. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too concerned for G2, especially because it's an invitational. So like their seeding kind of comes into play. It's not like it's not an open, so you don't like. I don't know. I feel like G2 do better when they. I was gonna say when they play like top teams, but then I'm kind of just. My take is just ruined by the graph that we're looking at right now, where they have 3 top 5 losses in a row. So I
Well,
don't know.
they got Shopify, like you said, round 1. And they've never G2 and
That's tough
Shopify have
team.
never really played before. Not even in like
Yeah.
going back to the top 16 quals. So
Tough team.
it'll be a new matchup for us.
Yeah, I think Shopify might be the most underrated team of the season. Maybe you could
Yeah.
argue, for me, Axel. It might be another one there that I definitely didn't see performing as well. I thought Two Piece was a great addition. I didn't I didn't realize how much he would fit in with Memory and Parth, respectively. Those two talented guys. They've always had the potential, them. I didn't know if 2Piece was the right guy, and boy, has he been for them. I know that they didn't make top 8 this time, but they're right in it. They're in the conversation. I think that's where they want to be, CJ, is, are we top 6? We're there. We just need some time to get there consistently, right?
Yeah, just looking at this is Shopify's right. I was like, who have they beaten though?
FaZe,
in terms of
V1.
They beat V1. They beat FaZe. Was that first regional? Is that in Swiss?
Yeah. No. Where is
No.
that?
Was it in the top 16 qual? Is that what that was?
Okay. Well, I'm forgetting about that. That's just making it you're in. I think that in terms of in the Swiss stage, in the actual main event, the only top 8 team they've beaten is FaZe in 2 regionals. So, is V1 in 2 regionals. So they beat Rogue, they beat Dig.
Yeah, you're right on that.
So I still like it. For me, they're the same as Optic. Like they're beating teams like sort of around them. They beat a V1 last regional, but V1 last regional wasn't the same as what we saw this regional.
V1 was like V0.
Yeah,
but that's a win for them, isn't it? Isn't being in the conversation a win for them? Or would you not? Like I think.
True. I see what you mean. I still think that for me in terms of like Swiss, they've had one good win against a V1 that wasn't the V1 this weekend. But they're just, I feel like they're just really good at beating the teams below them, like the Digs and the Axel, stuff like that. But I think, as you said, it is, I guess, in terms of they're consistently sort of around the 9th mark is good. But I can't see them, making a major this season. I guess that'd be crazy if they did. I think they could just stay around that 9th, 10th mark for this season.
Yeah,
or the gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers.
I just wanted to give a shout out to our producer Sleegy, who got a compliment in chat. He's running all the production and making it look good. I'm not, so all the credit goes to Sleegy. If you want to shout yourself out, Sleegy, go for it. But he's our awesome producer, Mr. Fluffy Dinosaur in the chat, saying our show looks good. Feels good, man. Not to take us off topic, but were there any other big surprises this weekend that you guys wanted to cover? We went over, I think, all pretty much, or any stories we didn't hit on that you guys wanted to touch on real quick.
I just really appreciate now, with all the Game 7 OTs and stuff, I just love watching like those little moments, you know what I mean, that sort of change games, those tiny little mistakes. I know about production, but there was a moment even in the grand finals. I think it was Game 5 OT, the winning goal. Like do you guys remember? Obviously, the Game 5, the Fireburner Garrett bump where they bumped each other on the wall. That's literally what happened in Game 5 that V1 lost. I just love those like little moments. I think it was like Torment and Beast Mode bumped each other on the wall, which made Beast Mode's rotation like that tiny bit slower. And then GenG scored off that. Like I just love like how. How you just can't make a mistake. Like that's where we are in Rocket League right now. Whereas before it was just heaps of mistakes, everyone's getting goals. But now it's just the competition, the level is so close that like these tiny little like nuances are the difference right now in those Game 7s or any overtime. So cool.
Yeah, and those little mistakes can magnify where one goal turns into you lose a game in a series, but you really needed that to avoid losing the series, and then that one series loss means you lose out by 1 point to go to the major, and then months down the line, maybe because you didn't go to the major, you get passed for worlds and you get stuck in wild card, and then you don't make it out of wild card, and all of this is possible as long as you don't bump each other like 3 months ago. It's just Rocket League's come so far, and from somebody who's quite old in that sense, I used to play before we like had textures for certain things in the game. The gameplay is quite good now. People are incredibly good at this game, and it makes it a real treat to watch.
Yeah, it's so finite. Even the boost timings now, where it's almost like you have to get it at 10 seconds, or it's not there. It's almost like they have all the timings down, the wall dashing, the ability to keep speed. And now I think we're going to start to see the next evolution for me is kind of the Oxygen playstyle, where before in Rocket, like when Splice played, our goal was to always pass it to each other. But the problem was we couldn't be fast enough to always do that or always have enough boost to be in the right spot. Now with the speed upgrades, I feel like Oxygen are doing what we wanted to do, but way better. And I think that that's the next way the game's going to go with possession is if you can't solo play it or keep it, you recognize that and you hit it to a teammate, whether it's backwards. We don't see back passes very often. I'm wondering when they're going to start coming in, or like pre-jumps, which I think like the synergy with your teammates, I think is like the next big step for Rocket League, because the possession, the individual stuff is there, and now it's about taking all that talent and connecting it with another piece, like a Messi type, where you just like go back and forth between each other and really utilize the team well. But another big story I want to talk about quickly is just Ghost. Ghost is a roster of Shock, Hoxer, and T-Corral. And you guys probably haven't heard of them this season because they haven't been qualifying. And,
yeah, they missed the first one, right?
Yes, I believe the first one they missed entirely, the main event. The second, the Cup, they managed to make the main event and ended up going 0-3 to 26 Rising, Shopify, and FaZe. Tough matchups, to be fair. That's kind of what happens when you don't make the first one. But, you know, I'm pretty sad for those guys. I think all three of them have been through tough careers, circumstantially, and I'm really pulling for them. And, you know, I feel for Ghost a little bit. I think they're a talented roster, and they're just struggling to find their footing in the bubble scene, which is crazy right now. I feel like we have different teams coming in at the bottom of these opens almost every time. Now, we're not going to see that next regional, but yeah, guys, I know there's not too much info on them, but any thoughts on Ghost? No.
They just have to wait like months until they have to play again, because
yeah,
there are no
man.
events for Sonics unless you're like a top 16 team.
Well, I'm sure there will be.
That event, maybe, we'll see. I don't know. That's a whole other discussion for a whole other show probably, but the bubble scene kind of lacking right now. And I remember when we used to have RLRS back in the day, there was at least something if you weren't like
Karma was on every week. Are you kidding me? That was prime time television. You guys, there was stuff to tune in there for, all right? Let's not downplay the RLRS here. Come on. Why don't we bring it back? I mean, should we bring it back? Is that a thing? I don't think they should.
I love the open format. I just think, yeah, there's been a problem with how they do the format now with sort of the 11th month season, 11-month season, that sort of has now been more exposed with this invitational qualifier. So there's just these massive gaps. The problem right now is if you're you know, just quickly, obviously, this is a topic for another day, I want to save for you, but if you're a world championship team or you're a team that's at Worlds, you nearly don't have enough of an off season. You've got a month off, but you might be making roster changes, looking to make new teams. If you're a team that doesn't make the last major in Worlds, you've got 4 months off. And then if you don't make the invitational qualifier, you've got another 3 months, 4 months off. So you've really got 8 months of the year you're not playing Rocket League. So I think it's more of a problem with just the overall structure. So yeah, we worked it out that if you didn't make the major, the final regional or the final qualifiers was like the 22nd of May of this year. So then you obviously have got all that time off until September, or when we just started here, end of September. You play 2 weekends of regionals, and then you're not playing again until end of January, February. So that's a massive gap in the roster, in the line. So might be just an overall format thing that needs to be addressed, where, yeah, the top teams are nearly playing too much and the bottom teams aren't playing enough. Maybe that's how it should be, but, yeah, the bubble scene's obviously not too happy about it.
Yeah,
it's rough for them.
I didn't realize when you put it the way you put it that it was, what did you say, 7 months out of the year you're not playing? Yeah,
well, the 22nd of May was the last Regional 3 qualifiers of the last season split, like spring split. So that's the 5th, and then they didn't start playing again until the end of September, so that's 4 month gap. And then you've got 2 weekends of qualifiers, which ended last weekend.
Crazy.
And then you're not playing again until the end of January, like the very last week of January. So that's another over 3 months. So that's, at least 7 months that you're not playing Rocket League.
I felt like we made progress when we changed from our league play style, which one of the problems was I felt like there wasn't enough Rocket League. And then when I looked at this format, I felt like there was too much Rocket League. Not a crazy amount of too much, but just probably too much for me to all watch. So, like, to hear that 7 months out of the 12 are off, that's crazy, because it doesn't look like that visually. I mean, if you're a top team, just to be clear, it's not 7 months. If you're a top team, it's 24/7, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's a problem as well. So So having the top be all the time and the bottom be not at all is, that needs to be bridged. That there's definitely a system there. I'm sure Sonics are aware and are in conversations about fixing that. But that's a great point. I didn't realize it was that sparing of competitions. That's tough. But yeah, I feel for Ghost. I think that they're a talented roster with players who have been around a while. A lot of veterancy on that team, and I'm gonna keep an eye on them. And that Accelerate team with Gimmick, Ajax, and Toasty. I did not see them performing as well as they have. I just wanted to give them a quick shout out. I think they've done a great job of taking a situation that kind of was frustrating for all of them. Ajax coming from that, I don't want to use the word failed, but not as promising United roster. And then joining up with Gimmick and Toasty, who a lot of people said, oh, they lost LJ, they're going to be done. No, they're not done. They're right back in it, in the 12th spot, fighting, improving every time. So shout out to them. I think they've looked good. I haven't seen them much, but have you guys been able to catch either of those teams' games?
Yeah, I've been watching a bit. I mean, I think Gimmick looks really good. Gimmick is on the road to World Championship level form again. I think maybe a few splits, maybe next season, Gimmick will actually. I think he'll be back on a top team, low key. So I'm rooting for Gimmick big time. I think he looks really good right now.
Yeah, I covered Dark Zero's run in the closed call, so I got to see a few of the bubble teams, which was interesting. And there actually was some quality teams in there. And yeah, Axel was one of those that was in the fighting for the main event. And obviously they've done well. They've made the Invitational qualifier next weekend. So yeah, they're a quality team. They're only going to get better. I think it's interesting. I feel like we've got a top 9, and then outside that, everyone's right there, or top 10, and then outside that 11 to maybe 20 mark is nearly so close. Anyone on their day can, take it up to these teams. So it's exciting times for North America. Unfortunately, for the guys outside the top 16, it's less exciting right now. But we can still look at a team like Axel in the Invitational next regional.
Yeah, no scheduled things for the bubble scene. I do think that there will be some stuff. It seems very unlikely that our community would allow that to happen just because of how passionate we all are about our little Rocket League esports. So I'm sure even if nothing happens, I'm willing to say Off the Post will put something on if we don't hear
we'll put on
any...
a tournament now?
Yeah, there'll be an Off the Post Invitational. If nothing else comes up, I'd love to, we could run something. I mean, as someone who pretty much lived in the bubble scene for most of her career, fighting to get out, I think, I, more than anyone, understand the will to want to improve and, the frustrations of being able to find an org to support you at that stage of your career, which for me was life-changing when Splice took a chance on me in that scenario that a lot of them are in. And I think you do need opportunity, and it's not even about the money. It's just, money is important to certain people because, you do dedicate a lot of time to this craft, and finding support for that is not only mentally relieving, but, I could go a whole tangent about that. Either way, bubble scene stuff, we need to improve it, and hopefully we get some stuff figured out for that. Any other storylines you guys wanted to hit on real quick?
I think we hit every single possible storyline in North America through the top 16.
Right.
Honestly, I think we knocked it out today.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think you guys did great. There is an event coming up this week that I did want to touch on quickly. It is a charity event that Kronovi and I will be participating in. CJ, next time I'll hit you with the invite. I didn't realize, okay? I did need a twos partner, but I already found one, all right, CJ, so I apologize.
Yeah, bit flat about it, but we move on.
I'll get you next time. It was the time difference, I was afraid to ask you, and I didn't know when you'd respond because you were, whatever time zone you're in. So I ended up foregoing, but I'll get you next time. But anyway, this Predator League Community Open, you guys can sign up for it if you go to, let me make sure I have this, bts.gg/Predator League NA. You can sign up for the tournament, the Community Open, and participate with your friends. It's a 2v2 invitational. You can win lots of prizes from Predator, laptops, gaming equipment, stuff like that. And then we'll have a charity invitational the next day after, where I think Crow and I are playing each other.
Or is that round? Is that,
I don't know if it's round one.
I hope
we might
I
be
can,
playing each other round one. Yeah, and we all know how
me and
that's gonna
Jazza
go
are
down.
bringing back the 2v2 Universal Open synergy. You better watch out.
Yeah, I got Mystic with me, so you're in trouble. You're in trouble, boy. But
No,
yeah,
we'll see.
we're participating. We're playing for Environmental Foundation, and we're really excited. And hope you guys can join us. So thank you. Hopefully, check that out. And check that out this week. But as for Off the Post, CJ, I want to shout you out real quick. You had a tremendous career. Your retirement video, I wanted to say, was really nice to watch. I know it's late, like a few months late, but you're here. So I thought it was awesome. Really nice tribute. And you were on the desk this weekend, which I think is awesome. And you got your show you're working on, which I love. I like tuning in every week. And you got anything else going on you want to talk about?
Not really. No, thanks for having me. I love the, I guess all the talk right now is about the analytical. People love the more analysis, and I love being able to sort of just dive into, as I said, the little nuances and things that make teams click. So thanks for having me, and yeah, can't wait to be tuning in next time.
Yeah, give
Have
CJ.
me back.
Yeah, we'll come back. CJ. Also, we usually do callers. We're working on getting an admin. So if you want to call into the show anytime, feel free. We'll bring you on instantly.
Awesome.
And we're trying to get an admin back in for that. I apologize to the chatters as well. If you give a CJ a follow on Twitter right here, at CJCJRL, really talented guy, awesome show. Check it out if you haven't. And, as well, Cam, you've been streaming a lot. Don't forget to, check out Kenobi as well.
Nah, guys, don't watch me. Follow CJ. If you were watching me today, you should have been following CJ.
That's right. I mean,
Shame
I
on
think
you.
everyone here is following CJ.
They better be. I'll find him.
Hopefully he grows back next week. I might slap him up on the field, as someone said in chat.
Yeah,
he might not want to come back after.
We might have a new
the
host,
beating.
guys. It might just be me. We'll see.
And also, we have to shout out Sleegy, our wonderful producer, who makes us look good. But that's going to be it for us from this NA post-game show. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be working next week on, CJ mentioned the analysis content. I wanted to bring in replay analysis for you guys from the games this weekend, but I ended up not being able to render the video in time, so that'll be coming for our next shows. We're going to do the Epic Pen and draw out some stuff from the games this weekend. Or from next week, it'll be Europe, right? So we'll be back next weekend after the European broadcast for our EU post-game show. And until then, feel free to join the Discord, participate in our chats, and that's where we take calls and stuff. And I think that's it. We're wraps. We're donezo.
Right. Yeah,
so we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night or day wherever you are. Bye-bye.
happy.